Hi guys, I'm Rhiannon Payne. I'm a Ruby community member here in Matsue, Japan with OKURA-san.
Hello.
We're at the tail end of the Ruby World conference. Well, it's actually the day after the end of the conference now, and we're about to take the train together back to Tokyo. OKURA-san is the chief organizer of the Kaigi on Rails conference, which is an incredible Japanese Rails conference that happens every year, usually in the fall, as well as an open source maintainer and freelance software developer. Kind of a big deal in the Japanese Ruby community, I think.
Yeah, I hope Kaigi on Rails will play an important role in Ruby community in Japan and also Ruby on Rails community worldwide.
You just had Kaigi on Rails in September, a little over a month ago.
Yep.
And I know you intentionally sought out more international speakers this year.
Yes.
Could you share the reason why and how that went?
Yeah, so the Kaigi on Rails started 2020 and that was the COVID year. So the first 3 years was a online virtual conference, and we started it as an in-person conference in 2023. And for the first 2 years, we put lots of effort to make it real, the conference. And we couldn't afford to make it international. And now it's the third occurrence of the conference, and I'm so used to talking to lots of foreigners visiting Japan for Ruby Kaigi. So Ruby Kaigi is different and the original Kaigi. And now there are 1,500 participants and 20% are foreigners or something.
Wow.
So I feel it's amazing because for us to go abroad to talk to Rubyists worldwide is kind of hard. They come to Japan to talk about Ruby. Then for me, it's great. But they talk about Ruby, not Rails. And there are lots of Rails devs in Japan. So I found it might be a good idea to welcome more foreigners to talk about Rails to Tokyo so that more Rails devs can talk to international Rails devs.
I love that we're just getting right into the meat of this conversation. At Ruby World yesterday, one of the interviews I asked, do you feel like living in Japan and being in the heart of the Ruby ecosystem, so close to all of these local and international events, close to MOTS and many members of the Ruby core team, do you feel that gives you an advantage in a way as a Rubyist or is inspiring or motivating? And they said absolutely yes. However, it can also be challenging because in Japan, you're so close to the heart of Ruby, but it could feel so far away from the heart of Rails. Do you feel like that's true?
Yeah, I think that's true. So Rails is developed worldwide because it's open source, but the main developers, open source developers, are located in either America or Europe. They're far away from Japan, and it takes a lot of time and effort and money to go to America, Europe, to join the conference or talk to people, especially recently because of the economic reasons. It gets even harder. And the language barrier. So, for example, in Europe, even though there are many countries who use their own language, the conferences are in English, so it's easier to communicate. But we are so used to do everything in Japanese. So, like I would say, most developers are not really comfortable speaking English, especially speaking English. The reading is okay, but speaking is hard. So communicating with foreigners is harder for us.
Would you say it's easier to communicate and collaborate with little Rubyists online, like on GitHub and Discord or other platforms like that, than it is going to a conference and striking up a conversation or giving a talk? Or
yeah, GitHub is the, I would say, easiest part because there is a Ruby code we can talk about, and the Ruby is the lingua franca for us. It's
that's
okay.
your communal language.
Yes, that's okay. And I know that most Japanese developers, Ruby developers, can read me in English and write documentation like in English too. But the more like verbal communication, like the more like having chat in person, is a different thing. And most people are not confident to expose themselves in English. Self-introduction, like having a casual ice-breaking chat to talk about Ruby and all of that.
Because so much of what happens with Ruby is concentrated in Japan, do you feel like those barriers prevent potential collaboration sometimes or limit the opportunities for Rubyists globally to work on project together? And does that make sense?
Yeah. If I understand it correctly, so many Ruby core development happen in Japan. The huge exception is Shopify, obviously. And they talk about their development progress in Japanese. That's okay for us. At least, if I join the event, then I can hear from them. But they rarely write something down, even in Japanese. And what I hear is like a kind of temporal information. It doesn't remain. So we lose the information after the event, or like some tweets. Because in Japan, we have a custom to talk about the event with Twitter hashtag or X hashtag, like for the whole event. So that's the only remaining resource for that event, if there's no recording.
Yeah.
And so then it's virtually impossible for people outside of Japan to know about it. And sometimes they write blogs in Japanese, but they don't write blogs in English. For example, like there are many curated resources like Ruby Weekly newsletter and things like that, but they rarely pick up those information.
So obviously a lot of really cool and important work is happening in the Japanese ecosystem for Ruby, and it's hard to get that like widely shared globally. Unless it's a major thing like this week, Mott's announced Ruby 4.0 officially happening this year. So things like that will easily get picked up, but...
Yes. So for example, the prominent examples are like, one is namespace, or formerly known as namespace, and because it's renamed to Ruby box, Ruby : box, quite recently. But like, they haven't published any resources about, or actually they haven't even explained what is namespace. The only exception is Ruby Kaigi, where the implementation, the main author, Maurice-san, he talked about it. But so that might be the only resource available about namespace or Ruby box in Ruby, although it's really important feature of Ruby 4.
If there's not enough English-speaking content or developers, content creators sharing about these things, it's not going to get picked up on necessarily by the wider global community, and then people won't know that these things are happening, that they can come and contribute and help make them better and help the ecosystem grow, and that limits Ruby's growth in some ways, having those cultural and linguistic divides.
Yeah, so another like prominent example is like parser. So there are two main parsers for Ruby. One is the traditional parser. It's often called parse_y. It's the name of the file. And another one is Prism, built by Shopify people. And Prism is like famous, well known, and it's used widely. And the parse_y is also evolving, thanks to the work from Japanese devs. But I believe most conversations and discussions are in Japanese. They have like chat in person. They don't talk about it on GitHub or something. Yeah. They don't talk about it in English. So it's really hard for people who don't read Japanese or who don't understand Japanese well to join the development. So the commit log is basically by only 3 or 4 Japanese devs. Or another interesting example is the type-related things. So there's a type system called RBS, Ruby Signature, originally developed by Sotaro-san. He's also working for Shopify now. And although type systems documentations are in English, they are available. But somehow, most commits are made by Japanese devs. That's an interesting example. Even though there are some resources available, somehow it looks like the people outside of Japan are not interested in RBS, or they can't contribute. I don't know.
But it's probably not that they aren't interested, it's just they don't know the extent of what's happening. Do you think?
Yeah, so as far as I know, so Taro-san has talked about his own work, like RBS, outside of Japan only a few times. And in contrast, Survey is an alternative type system built by Stripe, and that's why that's like better known. I think because they talk about it many times in conferences, in blogs, and then those blogs and talks are created in the more widely known resources like Ruby Weekly.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you feel like conferences are really the places where these connections are happening? If there are strong connections and collaboration between the Japanese Ruby ecosystem and international Rubyists outside of, obviously, Shopify's team, are those connections being made and that information being shared primarily at conferences like Kaigi?
Yeah, so actually, yesterday I found an interesting fact. So I work as a freelancer. I post like, oh, I'm looking for job opportunities, but nobody responded. And I meet like someone from the company in the sponsor booth. Then someone asked me like, oh, are you looking for a job? I know. They're like, okay, but why didn't you reply to me? But like those things happen in person. Yeah. So though we know RBS, what it is, we know that there isn't documentation, we know who developed it, but unless they meet in person, it's hard for them to contribute, or it's hard for them to feel like they want to contribute.
Yeah, because being in person, you can really, even if you speak different languages for the most part, I feel like you find ways to communicate through holding up your phone and using Google Translate, or asking a Ruby friend who knows both languages to help translate the conversation, like what was happening a lot yesterday at Ruby World. And using body language and gestures, and you see all of these interactions happening between like Western and Japanese Rubyists where they're like, wow, this is amazing, what you're working on is so cool, I've never heard about this before. Both coming as a Westerner and seeing the Japanese projects, and vice versa, Japanese people hearing about projects that we're working on, like my partner Justin, who's working on ActiveAgent, and talking about that. And being in Japan, it seems like you would never necessarily hear about those things if it wasn't at a conference, face-to-face.
Yeah, so the interesting example here is a Marco Roth work, or Reaction View. So he's talked about Reaction View for many places, and so we accepted his proposals in Kaigi on Rails. So he talked about it. He talked about Reaction View in September in Tokyo, and I knew him personally, but most people didn't know about him very much. But after his talk, like many people go to him and talk to him, like, oh, that was great. And I know like some people picked his talk as a favorite talk from Kaigi on Rails. So that's an example. We can watch videos from Rails World, for example. It's also in September, and that video was already available before Kaigi on Rails. So technically, we can just watch it, but we don't.
But if it's here and you're in the room feeling the energy, it gets you really excited.
Yes, and especially in his talk, there was a interesting demo using Reaction View, so the people was like, oh crap,
Yeah.
that doesn't happen
Right.
on YouTube.
Do you feel like since then, I know it's only been like a month and a half since Kaigi on Rails, but have you started to hear about Japanese Rubyists actually working with Herb in their projects now?
The guy I know is also organizer of Kaigi on Rails. So our web application for the conference is built on not Herb. So it was not built on Herb, but so we wanted to introduce it. And so one organizer tried to introduce it, and he found a bug, so he reported it to Herb. So things like that happened.
That's awesome. So I guess now more Japanese Rubyists are probably like submitting issues and PRs and actually contributing to these projects that they find out about at these conferences. Yeah. And that goes back to what we were talking about originally, being very intentional about making events like Kaigi on Rails more international. And obviously from this conversation, there's a huge benefit to the Japanese ecosystem in doing that. You and I met in Amsterdam a few months ago at Rails World, where you were giving a talk.
Yeah.
And your talk was in English about looking back at Rails 1.0.
Yes.
And I know it was extremely well received at that conference. How is that for you, going to international conferences, giving talks in English? Obviously, you're a very good English speaker, but does that ever feel challenging, or I guess different from the same thing at Ruby Kaigi here?
Yes, the first English talk I gave was in Japan. So there's a Ruby meetup called Tokyo Rubyists Meetup, where it happens in Tokyo, but I would say 80% of the attendees are foreigners, English speakers. So I've given the English talk there 3 times so far. 4 times maybe. So it was not the first time. And going to the international conference outside of Japan was like Eureka 2023 was the first time. That time I felt nervous because that's the first time to give English talk in front of 300 people. But now it's like almost 5th time or something. So now I feel like, okay, let's do it.
It's a lot easier.
Yeah, now I'm used to it.
Yeah.
And I feel it's a good opportunity to train my English, because I don't use English for my work. I need opportunities to use English so that I keep my skills. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
When it comes to Ruby Kaigi and Kaigi on Rails, like I've been to Ruby Kaigi and the conference is extremely accommodating to foreign attendees.
Yeah.
It's primarily attended by Japanese Rubyists, but a lot of people come from everywhere.
Everywhere, yes.
Literally all over the world. And there's translation from Japanese to English, like translation devices. Someone told me yesterday that there's not translation going the other way for the English, because there's a handful of English talks and no translation for Japanese. So it's almost like the conference is trying really hard to be a really accommodating host for foreigners, even a little bit at the expense of the Japanese community in a way.
Yeah.
How does it feel, how do you Japanese Rubyyists feel about that generally when more and more talks happening in English at these events?
Yeah, so Ruby Kaigi is so interesting because the chief organizer of Ruby Kaigi is Matsuda-san, Akira Matsuda, and his thought is like, we should like use English, basically. So we cannot ask foreigners to use Japanese, but English is a international language. And I personally kind of disagree, because currently for most Japanese devs, listen to English talks at the normal speed, like 1.0 times speed, is hard, and all the slides are of course in English. It's not that easy to read it because reading speed is really different. Reading Japanese is okay, it's fast. Reading English is much slower. So like they cannot understand 100% of the talk. And Ruby Kaigi is so technical. They talk about new things like JIT, ZC, concurrency, reactor, or things like that. Their implementations. So like sometimes people tend to avoid English talks, as far as I observe. So my hope is that Kaigi on Rails will provide two-way translations so that it's more friendlier for like Japanese devs.
That's great. I think that's really important, and making sure everyone who attends feels accommodated, comfortable, and is able to really take in all of the information that's being shared. We were talking about how important it is to bring global Rubyists to Japan to present their work, and how that inspires and brings news about things that are happening globally to the Japanese ecosystem. So you just have to find a middle ground. So it was actually Marco Roth. I was chatting with him a little bit a few months ago when I signed up for the Ruby World Conference, and he said that I should reach out to you because I was talking to Marco about it would be really great to have more resources for the global Ruby community about all of the things that are happening in Japan, because obviously this isn't intentional, but it does feel a bit siloed, like we've been discussing. And he was like, Okura-san was saying something very similar at Kaigi on Rails when I was there. You should talk to him. So yeah, I reached out to you on Twitter, and we've been having conversations at this conference. And I'm excited to collaborate with you. Would you want to share a little bit more about what you were thinking and the reasons behind that?
So you mean in general?
Yeah, your general, like us collaborating on a project for kind of sharing news and connecting, bridging the gap between the Ruby and global ecosystem, the Japan and global.
There are two things, and one is for Japanese people to go outside, and second thing is welcome more foreigners to Japan. And the second thing is easier, partly because of the economic reasons, partly because of the kind of nationality, I would say. So Japan is an island country, so people sometimes hesitate to go outside. And so for the second thing, I started a Japanese podcast about Ruby last year, but I couldn't keep it. Only 2 episodes. And recently I'm planning to restart it. And like having a casual chat like this in person and talking about recent information about Ruby, especially happening outside of Japan. So that's one idea. Like pushing people to go outside, talk about your work thing is more difficult because it depends on personal situations like health or money, things like that. So actually I couldn't find a good way to promote people to go outside. Although I personally persuade some people, like some of my friends.
That's awesome.
To, you can talk about it in this conference outside of Japan. So
that's cool. Me and Justin do the opposite. When we go to Ruby conferences in the US and Europe, we always tell people, you should come to Ruby Kaigi. Ruby Kaigi is the best conference. And so many people are like, I've always dreamed of going to Ruby Kaigi, but I'm a little scared too because of the language barrier. Like I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to communicate, and that's one misconception we've tried to break. Justin and I don't really speak Japanese. I'm learning right now, but I'm very beginner still. So we've never had a big issue. We always find ways to communicate with people and build friendships and relationships at these conferences. You have to just take the step to do it and know that people will be so accommodating, and you'll find ways to talk and you'll find ways to get so much out of the experience.
So I know that Ruby Kaigi is so welcoming and friendly. To prove to be like that, in Ruby Kaigi's venue, I've pushed several of my friends, here's him, let's go. Literally pushing. So yeah, Ruby Kaigi is great. It's really great and it's really friendly. But it's also true that like foreigners are afraid they don't speak Japanese. But Japanese people are also afraid, I can't speak English. So but I want to say, no, it's not that big thing. If you cannot talk about complex thing, it's fine.
Yeah.
Just say hi.
You have to just make an effort, I think. That's the crucial thing, is like we'll pull in a friend like you or Hayato-san who speak great English to be like, hey, would you mind helping us communicate back and forth and have a conversation? Or we'll use Google Translate or whatever. Like you just make an effort and you find a way.
Yeah.
And I think that's what everyone needs to know. And I think, everyone should come to Ruby Kaigi. It's such a special conference. Or I haven't been to Kaigi on Rails yet, but I want to.
Yeah, so Kaigi on Rails is try to be as good as Ruby Kaigi.
It will be.
Yeah.
You've already got great speakers like Marco Roth. I'm excited for next year. And we were talking as well about different ideas for sharing Japanese projects and progress with the rest of the world, and potentially collaborating on a newsletter or something where you could be a point person in Japan collecting information on the ground and sharing with me, and I can translate and package that into something that we then share out with the rest of the community with, here are new projects, new things, new features, new companies building with Ruby, whatever, and here's opportunities to get involved in some of these projects. If you like a project, here's the Discord or the place to go to try to get involved, and they're looking for contributors, and it's okay if you don't speak Japanese, like really trying to bridge that gap. That's something I'm excited about.
Yeah. Oh, so we have an important person here. That's Aaron Patterson. So maybe you know that, but Aaron is a Ruby committer and Rails committer, and he is of course, he's a native speaker of English, but he gave a few talks in Ruby Kaigi in Japanese. So that was so interesting because Aaron gave a talk in Japanese and the translator translated it into English.
That's awesome.
And it's like in Takeout's edition in 2021, he did it by himself.
Oh my god.
So Aaron is also like key person because he writes like blog posts sometimes in English. So he is a kind of also bridge.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, he's someone we should definitely chat with too. I was lucky enough to get dinner with him in Matsuyama during Ruby Kai, and he was ordering. I think we were all American or European at the table. He was ordering for everyone in Japanese, and that's a relatively simple thing, but it was very impressive in my eyes. And he's great, and I think we need to really find who are these people out there in the ecosystem who are community minded and want to be involved and participate in sharing this information, closing that gap, really promoting more of this collaboration, because it sounds like from everyone I've been talking to this week at Ruby World, like that kind of effort could really help Ruby, the ecosystem and the language as a whole, keep growing.
Yeah, so like languages and technologies, frameworks are developed by people. So when they know each other better, then the result could be better, even better. That's what I'm interested in.
And you can't always go to a conference. There's so many developers who are never able to attend a conference for whatever reason, who will only be able to interact online, and creating resources for them to understand what's going on. And then hopefully I'd like to talk to a few people in the US and South America and Africa and different regions around the world, and figure out like, how do we find those people, the right people, to collect that information about what's happening in their region and sharing that back to the Japanese ecosystem and everyone else. Eventually turn this into a truly global project. Would be really cool, I think.
Yeah, that's a cool idea.
We'll see. It's a big idea.
Honestly, I created a Substack channel about like publishing Japanese local Ruby news in English, but I couldn't even publish the first one because there are so many things happening at the same time, and writing English by myself is so hard.
Yeah.
Writing in English is really hard for me, and I gave up even before I really started it. So it's really amazing to see like Rhiannon is doing.
Thank you. I think it'll be a really fun project. I want to move to Japan next year and start a business here. So selfishly, it's a really good way to build deeper connections with people like you here in the Japanese ecosystem. Kind of a cool way to do it that I think will hopefully have a big impact. And yeah, Gen AI will help a lot too.
Oh yes, yeah. So at the time when I wanted to start the Substack newsletter, the AI was not as great as now, obviously.
Yeah.
So now
that's going to be game changing.
Yes, and it's a good time to start something.
And folks like Hayato-san, I think, will be willing to help as well, review things and translate things. And we already have a lot of people who are interested in getting involved. So I'm excited.
Yep, me too.
Really cool. We have a train to catch soon to get back to Tokyo.
Yes.
As you guys can probably see, it's gotten progressively darker during the last 35 minutes we've been filming.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm like, are we just shadows? Maybe.
And now it's, it's autumn, so it's getting darker and darker so quickly.
5 o'clock. But also, one thing before we wrap up, Matsue City, where we are now for Ruby World, is beautiful. I had so much fun at Ruby World. It's a very Japanese-centric conference. Like, all talks were in Japanese, except for maybe 1 or 2.
Yes, and one, of course, keynote from Bantara.
Yes.
Yeah, but this year, only one English talk.
But that being said, I feel like we got so much value out of being here, just making that effort to make friends and connect with people in the Japanese ecosystem. And I'm just so excited to continue to grow these relationships.
Yes.
And it's just really exciting to feel the energy here. There truly is no energy at a Ruby event like there is here in Japan. You can feel the passion and feel how much it's thriving.
Yeah, and Matsue is a city famous for sake.
Yeah, hot sake.
Hot sake. So if you like hot sake, you will definitely want to come.
Definitely. And it's Matsu's hometown.
Yeah.
So yeah, yay, thank you again.
Yeah, thank
and
you.
let's go get on the train.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.